Hey everyone. We were still in module one. Now we're in part three. Didn't say that last time. And I realized something, it's just like when I say I'm not going to teach you everything about pronouns and everything about names, um, I can't help but teach you that as we talk, because that's trans life. When I started coming in to being trans, my friend Sunny Normarkin wrote a beautiful article about doing oral histories with hundreds of trans people about their lifespan and key moments that really stuck out to them. And one thing that many of them said was not that they came out like in their sexuality, but they came into like coming into yourself. So when I came into being trans, I was told by so many people, often BIPOC friends, Black, Indigenous, Latinx, East, South, Southeast Asian, that I didn't need to explain to anyone anything about me, that people could do research. I think it's very, very different when it comes to race and heritage and ethnicity. We agree that these are different kinds of identities, but there aren't a lot of trans people still. And most trans people are young, right? There are more and more young people identifying as non-binary, trans, and gender non-conforming. And that's amazing and beautiful that they can feel that way. And clearly the pandemic was a huge effect for people of all ages saying, actually, this is who I am. And I have to be at home with myself all the time. I'm gonna be myself. Um, and in terms of my own journey, which I think is important to share as, well, I met a trans person. How'd that happen? I realized I was trans in a class. I went to a non-denominational, very radical seminary at Columbia University called Union Theological. And in the class, there was a, a description of transvestites and transsexuals and transgender people. This is from the Unitarian Universalists. Love them. God bless them. And it said that, transgender is someone who doesn't identify with the sex and or gender assigned at birth. It's like, oh, that's interesting what that means. It's 2004. Hadn't a clue. Never heard it before. And then the next said, transsexuals could be pre-op or post-op, pre-hormone or pre-ho, or post-ho, post-hormone. And I was like, just thinking about it, you could count. And then there was transvestites, people who wear the clothes of the gender not assigned at birth. And I looked down and I said, oh my God, I'm a transvestite. I had always read that definition as someone who um, uh, was a man who wore women's clothes. And that's how that was portrayed. That person was always portrayed as evil, as sick in books and cartoons and comics and TV shows. And the idea of transgender was all these things. And I was like, oh my God, I'm transgender. And I had just got really, really good at being a lesbian, like because I knew I was a lesbian, like when I was 14, and I was so nervous. This nerves. And I went to college and I learned all about it. I learned the lyrics of the Indigo Girls, and I was like, one day I will own a Subaru, and just I will live in flannel, right? And I will have a dog. And it's all true. I love a carabiner or whatever, right? These kind of tropes about lesbians. And I thought that they would keep me safe. I thought there was a way of living. I thought there was some structure, order of life. Don't we? Don't we all? We wish, we dream. Um, and so, finding out trans, oh God, another identity. And so it took me a while to figure out my name. I lived in Berlin. I left New York. I lived in New York for 13 years. I moved to Berlin for a couple of years and was like, I'm gonna try out that name thing. And I picked Jack. Some people hate the name that they were assigned at birth. Jen has 35 years in my life, and I gonna keep it around. It's still part of me. I want to keep those 35 years, but that's how that works for me. I don't see it as a dead name. Dead naming is also a verb when someone you use something that they don't use anymore. And then I had the name, and I kept thinking about surgery. I was dating someone who had smaller breasts, and I said, well, what happens when you wear a sports bra? Because I have all this back pain. Maybe I could get reduction. And she's like, well, why would I push them down? And I was like, because you want pecs. And she's like, no, well, why would I jack? Why would I do that? And I was like, oh, oh, I want something different. Um, and so I had top surgery. Um, and that is incredibly expensive. Transmedical procedures cost. They're well, they're covered in Canada. They take years to get. Very, very stressful to wait for. In the UK, it's about 5 years, I've heard. Canada, it's a couple, 2 or 3, matters where you live. Um, and in the US, it could be tomorrow, but you have to pay for it unless your insurance covers it, and then they only cover certain providers. And you may not like that provider. There are different kinds of surgeries. Like if you are assigned female birth and you have the double mastectomy and the plastic surgery to rebuild pics, you can keep your nipples to pop up or not. You can keep nipple sensation or not. You can keep your nipples or not, right? Um, and if you are someone thinking, my God, plastic surgery, I thought we were going to write about poems. We're going to talk about poems in a second. I'll come back. But plastic surgery, most plastic surgery is gender affirming, right? People want their nose to look a certain way, or they want their breasts to look a certain way, or they want their calves to look a certain way. They don't want a belly. They don't want these arms. They want, whatever their chin. Um, yeah, that's affirming who you are. Anyway, poems. Jack Keesking, silly goose. Um, anyway, but I should come full circle to say I started hormones at the beginning of the pandemic. I finished this book, lesbian, queer, bi trans history of New York City, and I thought, and my foot hit the stair, and I said, "Oh, I'm gonna finally try testosterone." And my ex girlfriend from the living room said, "Good work, Muffin. Like let's do it." So now here I am writing poems with you. So found poem is a wonderful, wonderful thing. You can't get any easier than that. It's a poem consisting of words found in a non-poetic context, right? So, uh, in other words, it's not your poem. So you can take these words out of the interviews of one poet. You could take words from all the interviews of the poets. You could take all the first words of all the poems. You could take all the last words. You could take random words from one poet, which is what I did from both their interview and the words. I chose Joshua Jennifer Espinosa for this because we read her poem and some of her words. And some people say they're not poetic. I want you to engage with a trans poet. So that's a traditional definition. But the idea is you're going to take these existing texts and refashion them. You're going to render them. You're going to present them as poems. It's the way poets diaries say. It's like a collage. It's all you're doing. And you know what you could do really well in middle school? A collage. Grade school, a collage. So you're stop here. You're just gonna take the words and you're gonna put them anything. You could also, if you want to add something to it, you're like, I couldn't find enough in here. You have to use at least some of the words from the book. You could grab an article on trans people. You could grab a speech. You could grab a TikTok story, and you can grab those other words. Now, there are pure found poems where you only use words that you find out there and you put them together. This doesn't need a pure found poem. Grab at least 20 words. That's it. You need at least 20 words. Now, here is I grab phrases and I'm determined to lose. I'm determined to lose half and I'm determined to use half. So that's great. And here they are in my really crappy handwriting, right? There's just a list. So some of them are like, we're sharing while deciding right in front of you, and women. Names for bodies as a table. My body full, also beautiful leaving. Let me breathe, I breathe. Kiss my fingers hello. My pride. I imagine all my cis friends. Um, and so you're gonna need a poem, you're gonna need a title. So before we go into the next section, I'm gonna give you the directions in this module 1, part 3. How do you write the poem? First thing is you're gonna give yourself a title. Write it down. Write down anything. that comes to mind having read all these poems. So one way to do this is like, how did you feel reading all these, right? And my title, I'll share it in the next section. I'm going to share all my poems at the end. So anyway, I'm going to share them at the end. But these are cutouts like a collage. One way you can do this is take your 20 words, phrases, write them somewhere on the page, and then write around them, which is what I'm going to do. And you want about a 20-line poem, so you could have a word, a line in each one. And this is a loose framework: 20 words, 20 lines, title of your choosing, anything that comes to mind. You could literally write, if you're out of thinking, there's a title right there, subject to change, pilfer. And that's what you're doing, right? What is the topic? I don't know. You could reply to the poet. You could talk about how you felt. You could talk about how you need to work on your glue gunning for your cards that you're making for your mother later. You could talk about a patient you met and you didn't know what to do with them. It's a little haunting. Or, whoa, it went well, or you think it will be. Should there be stanzas? Should there be lines? Should there be rhymes? That is up to you. You absolutely don't have to do that. We are mostly working in a tradition of modern poetry today and tomorrow and the next day. So, no. But I do want you to set a timer. 15 minutes max. That's it. 15 minutes max. And in the last part here, we're going to reflect on it. Okay. So 15 minutes max, set your timer, 20 words, phrases, 20 lines. Let's go. Game on. Game with a Y.